Good afternoon. It's terrific being here. So I'm the head of the networking and security group, and I'm not going to talk about that group. Instead, what I want to talk about is one of the efforts. We've had a whole bunch of efforts in the group that I think has had a really very interesting to me trajectory spanning more than 2 decades, and one of ICSI's very nice success stories. Ongoing. So what is BRO? I said this is ICSI and the BRO project's my title. This is the one technical part of my talk. I'm going to just briefly walk through what it is. It's a software system. Its goal is to monitor network traffic, internet traffic, particularly for understanding it with security applications. And this is the basic architecture. It is watching traffic, so it is a observer, passive observer. It taps into the traffic, like captures some of the light off the fiber or whatever, and applies filtering to it. Now, this is the original architecture I'm sketching. This part has evolved a lot today. Originally, it would statically filter the traffic. It would discard some of it based on simple rules. Today, it uses dynamic rules to filter. And then that stream of traffic goes into what I call an event engine. And the event engine takes the traffic and pieces it together into events that describe activity. An event is something happened right now with the following characteristics. The key thing about these events is they are not making an assumption about this is a good thing or a bad thing. They're just trying to describe something happened. And they have different semantic levels. The semantics are abstracted away from the network. So there's very few events about packets, for example, the atomic unit of networking. And events are instead, a user is logged in, or a web resource was requested, or an email response came, or whatever. That stream of events then goes into an interpreter for a domain-specific language that is used to execute scripts over the events. And the scripts have rich functionality available to them. They store a lot of state. They can track activity over time. They can pull in other input sources than just the network. They can codify various policies the site cares about, et cetera. This is how you program the framework. They can also take action. So they can write logs about what's happened. They can generate alerts to the operator in real time. They can invoke programs to, say, block traffic and the like. This part in particular, the logs, that is proven of enormous utility because it is a very high-quality record of past activity, such that, in particular, when a site finds, we've had a security incident, now they can dig up all the context around it, understand how it happened, how wide-ranging was it, how to prevent it in the future. All right, so that's the system. Now, why is it called BRO? Well, here I'm going to enter into the historical perspective of the project, and I warned you it's more than 2 decades. So I'm going to use several timelines to illustrate the project's growth and evolution over time. This is a plot of downloads of either the original paper, which I'll get to in a minute, or the distribution, the software distribution. The story, though, starts back in 1994 or so, when I was at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, as one of the staff there, and doing a work-study PhD on campus. And I was advised by Domenico Ferrer, founding fathers of ICSI. And the network traffic that I would gather would sometimes be of use to the site's security team to figure things out. So they would come to me and say, hey, did you happen to measure this for your research? And this happened often enough that in 1985 I was thinking, I should build a system to do this. And the system would be designed to actually find activity as it occurs, as opposed to the sort of post facto mine it out of my research data. So I'm working on that, and we move forward to late 1997 when I don't have as good a illustration as you did, but when Scott approached me and Sally Floyd over there and some others to put together an internet research group at ICSI. So we started talking about it then. And shortly after the paper came out, BRO, a system for detecting network intruders in real time, and in it, so here we get to the name, says our monitoring system is called BRO, an Orwellian reminder that monitoring comes hand in hand with the potential for privacy violations. This has been a concern of mine going all the way back, right? As soon as you start monitoring network traffic, you realize, my goodness, is there a lot in there? And it's very unsettling. And so I wanted there to be a reminder right in our faces, don't abuse this technology. Okay, so the paper comes out, and with it a release, and that's not literally how I generated the documentation, but it's essentially what you got, all right? Very little documentation. Scott had put together the AT&T Center for Internet Research at ICSI. So you know it's powerful when you have two acronyms inside your acronym. And with Hamid's terrific help. And so ICSI now became the sort of core center of the BRO project, with Lawrence Berkeley Lab still a key partner and has been across the decades I'm going to sketch. A little later, LBL had enough confidence in the BRO system to allow it to automatically block attacks, particularly scanners. And this is a very high bar, particularly back then, but today even too, to allow an algorithm to disrupt connectivity in the network. That's really hard for networking people to accept because they like to know they're in control of their connectivity, and it speaks to their confidence in the system and the utility they found. Here, more than a year later, we finally get a BRO user manual, just kind of, sort of. So the project's a very researchy thing, and with nominal support for people to pick it up. Now, if we move back in time a little bit, in 1998, this open source project, BRO's open source also, I should say, called Snort is released. And Snort is basically in the same space. Snort is looking at network traffic. Unlike BRO, it's not making policy neutral observations. It's looking specifically for badness. Has a much simpler architecture, much more limited architecture. It's much easier to understand. So Snort comes out, and then the paper comes out a year later, and then only in early 2001, a company is spun up, SourceFire. So this just takes 3 years. We should keep that in mind as we move along through the decades. All right. Robin shows up at, he starts working with BRO as a student when he is at Saarbrücken at the time and goes to TU Munich. And he comes and interns at ICSI, does this for a lengthy period of time, goes through the DAD program. This is one of our collaborators' Photoshop skills. And BRO is at the level where I can at least convince, IEEE supercomputer and so forth, why don't I do a tutorial on it? AT&T is a victim of the dot-com bubble bursting and has to pull out of funding Siri. And Hamid did heroic efforts to give us bridge funding in this time. It does mean now we're looking for grant support. Previously, we didn't have to do it. All right, now these curves start getting a little interesting. BRO's announced on public mailing list hadn't been before. You had to sort of know about it or dig it out of the paper. And uptake begins. And we pitch a grant to NSF, the Strategic Technologies for the Internet program, saying, going to do viable network defense for scientific research institutes. That's the pitch. And we asked for $1.6 million, and they say, how about $900,000? So that's cool. That's not a small chunk of change. And it includes in it a notion of create a community, but there's no way with just 10%, $90,000 we can do that. We get a bunch of papers out of this. So I'm ignoring the research side of this story, but it's an interesting story. We talked the Department of Energy into funding, hey, create this sort of usable version of BRO, it'll be really handy and so forth. And DOE gets excited and sets up the project and funds it, and then there's a regime change at DOE and our proponent leaves and the project just folds. All this while, network traffic is growing and growing. This is data that Robin got from TU Munich about the volume of total traffic and incoming traffic, terabytes per month. You can see it's going way, way up, which means we care a lot about performance for doing this sort of monitoring. Now I'm shifting to another scale. We begin working on a cluster-based approach that can scale to deal with that sort of high performance demands. This makes Bro the premier high performance thing out there. And it already was, competitive with the others. And it means we start thinking about what's going to make it really operator friendly, and it's also hard to sell to. So unfortunately now we're at the point where, it's difficult to get NSF excited about this thing that's really kind of not research. Or actually is research, but hard for the community to appreciate research. I really had to phrase it that way. Around this time, this guy, Seth Hall, comes on our radar. He's a Bro user at Ohio State. He's really enthused. He's gung-ho, and he totally gets how to leverage it. We pitch a big continuation of the project to NSF. We say, hey, we want to do approaches to network defense proven in open scientific environments. How about 2 million? They say, how about 236,000? SourceFire is doing better at the time. They get offered to be bought at 225 million. That gets turned down by regulators. They IPO. LVL's Bro is blocking more than 100,000 malicious IP addresses a day. A new NSF program comes on our radar, and we discover that ICSI at Illinois is thinking about pitching to it too. So we go in together, enhancing Bro for operational network security monitoring scientific environments. How about 2.995 million? Sure. So they fund the entire thing, and it's going to do up-to-date documentation support and unify the code base and so forth. And then a key thing in the project's evolution, this is where Robin takes over as lead of the Bro project. So in some ways, I should just hand it over to him to finish the talk. But and we're able to hire Seth, that's great, at ICSI. And our collaboration actually works. I've done a bunch of multi-institute collaborations that are not easy to make happen. Okay, moving forward a bit. Robin, Seth, and I are talking, we're thinking, we cannot rely on NSF to pony up, 3 million every now and then to keep the project going. We need something more reliable, and so we decide to create a company whose profits can sustain, and call it Corelight. And money's in the air, so SourceFire now gets bought by Cisco for $2.7 billion. NSF wants to help continue the project. We ask for 3.7 million, we get 3.3. That's great, that's what sustained us till today. We're basically at the very end of that. Network traffic is growing like crazy, so here's the plot Robin got originally, here's the new one, that's the part that was original. This is log scaled, it's growing 50% a year, it just never stops. But what really matters for growth these days is not that, but of course Twitter followers. So the project was growing by 500 a year, then got kicked up into this 1,100 a year growth. Here it is up through today. A year ago, Corelight, having about 6 employees, received $9 million in venture funding. This year, with 44 employees, got $25 million in venture funding. So it's clearly a huge interest in this technology. This glitch here, I'll blow up. And that's really remarkable. If you're a data person, like, what the heck happened there? Well, that's the day we announced we're changing the name of the project. Bro has become this unfortunate pejorative, but it's really bad. We've had people come to the BroCon, which is the name of the conference, saying, I cannot get my management to take this thing seriously. I tell them, there's an open source project, it's called Bro, and they're like, you gotta be kidding. So literally, people were saying this, it's been a real problem, so we decided to change the name. And this spans the window of which the community can suggest names. We get several hundred There's a very laborious process I'll spare you of winnowing those down, but in 6 days we will announce the new name. Yeah, you don't get it. All right, I have just a couple of quick slides that are expansive. So one is expansive in time. This is the funding history. Robin made this pretty awesome figure showing research funding, that's the gray, and transition to practice funding, which is the golden sort of yellow one. And you can see there's just a ton of effort across all these projects, all these people, really a lot of work. Here are some companies and institutes that use Bro today, and this is from either they've talked about it at BroCon, or they have job postings looking for people with Bro and so forth. You can see it's just, tons and tons of usage. And I'll finish with the most, I think, pleasing thing, accolade for the project comes from NSF, and it's in their 2017 budget request to Congress, and they're calling out, hey, these are the awesome things they've done, like hunting for gravity waves and like Bro. And so that really spoke to NSF's satisfaction with this enormous long trajectory that they and many others put so much into. So with that, I will finish.